Elvis Presley's stepbrother is releasing a new book, and it has some fiery allegations. In the book, My Brother Elvis, author David E. Stanley shares personal stories about life with Elvis and his struggles with addiction.
There was one girl I spent a lot of time with during that period. Her father served in the Air Force, and they had just arrived a couple of months before I left. She came to the airport to see me off, stood quietly while a few photos were taken. But no, it wasn't some epic love story, just a fleeting connection in a sea of moments. What the world never saw was everything that surrounded Elvis Presley in private. The loyalty, the protection, and the silence. His inner circle, known as the Memphis Mafia, held onto secrets like sacred scripture. One of them, David Stanley, his stepbrother, bodyguard, and perhaps unwitting accomplice, has broken decades of silence, and his revelations are staggering. Elvis Aaron Presley entered this world on January 8, 1935, in a humble two-room home in Tupelo, Mississippi. But he wasn't alone. His twin, Jesse Garon Presley, was born 35 minutes earlier, still and silent. That absence would follow Elvis like a shadow. His mother, Gladys, never let go of that loss. She poured her soul into the son who survived, convinced he was living for both of them. They couldn't afford a proper gravestone for Jesse, only an unmarked plot of earth. Elvis would speak to his brother in quiet moments, believing he drew strength from that unseen bond. Their lives were marked by crushing poverty. They had electricity, but couldn't afford to turn on the lights. Water came from a well, and dinner was usually cornmeal fried in lard. When Elvis was 3, his father, Vernon, forged a small check and went to jail for 8 months. They lost their home and moved in with relatives. By the time Elvis turned 13, he'd lived in half a dozen different houses. His clothes were stitched by hand, and kids mocked him for bringing biscuits and gravy to school. Still, in the midst of this hard life, something beautiful began to take root. It started in the little church down the road. At 9 years old, sitting in the pews of the First Assembly of God, Elvis felt something raw, something real. Music wrapped around him like warmth. Pastor Frank Smith noticed the boy's wide eyes and taught him a few chords. Elvis couldn't afford much, but he owned a how-to book and an unstoppable hunger for sound. Gospel music became his refuge. He never stopped singing it, even after he became a star. Behind the curtain, far from the lights, it was gospel that soothed his soul. The world he grew up in was falling apart. Mississippi, in the grip of the Great Depression, had been gutted. The flood of 2027 had devastated entire communities. Cotton fields were failing, families were broken. But out of that chaos came a strange, vital mix. Despite the laws of segregation, black and white families often lived side by side in poverty. The Presleys once lived in a mostly black neighborhood. It's where Elvis discovered the sounds that would shape him forever: gospel, blues, soul. At night, he'd tune in to WDIA, listening to B.B. King spin records that crackled with electricity. While most white families banned their children from hearing black music, Elvis leaned in. In 1948, the family moved to Memphis. Vernon had heard there were jobs, but for Elvis, the city felt like stepping into an entirely new dimension. His high school had more than 1,500 students. Overwhelmed, he fled home his first day. But things began to change when they landed a spot in the Lauderdale Courts housing project. Just blocks away was Beale Street, the heartbeat of Memphis blues. There, Elvis immersed himself in the city's rhythm. He soaked up concerts, haunted record shops, studied the street performers. His first guitar had been a birthday gift from his mother. He'd wanted a bike or a gun, but she chose a guitar. That $7.90 gift changed history. He couldn't read music, but he could feel it. He played with urgency, snapping strings and belting lyrics with wild energy. By high school, he had a style that raised eyebrows. He wore slacks when everyone else wore jeans, and slicked his hair like the actors he idolized. Most people thought he was odd, quiet, withdrawn. That changed the night he took the stage at his school's talent show in 1953. The moment he sang, the room lit up. He did 2 songs. They begged for more. He wasn't invisible anymore. After school, Elvis took odd jobs: usher at a theater, truck driver for Crown Electric, even helping a rabbi on the Sabbath. But music never left his side. He wandered down Beale Street at night, soaking up everything, watching B.B. King, sneaking into clubs where white kids weren't welcome. "They'd been singing like that for years," Elvis once said. "I just gave it a new twist." That twist was about to set the world on fire. In 1953, he walked into Sun Records and paid to record 2 songs for his mother's birthday. Nothing came of it, but months later, Sam Phillips, the studio's owner, invited him back. One night in July 1954, while fooling around with an old blues tune, "That's All Right, Mama," the magic struck. Scotty Moore on guitar, Bill Black on bass. They all locked into something nobody had heard before. Not quite country, not quite blues, something entirely new. Phillips told them to play it again, this time with the recorder rolling. The track hit the radio weeks later. Dewey Phillips, a Memphis DJ, played it repeatedly that night. The phones lit up. People were desperate to know, was the voice black or white? Dewey asked which high school he attended. "Humes," Elvis replied. And with that answer, everyone knew. But the sound? That sound was changing everything. With drummer DJ Fontana added to the mix, the band took shape as the Blue Moon Boys. They toured hard, 3 shows a day, sometimes more. Audiences screamed. Critics snarled. Some towns tried to ban them, but they couldn't stop what had already started. Behind the scenes, a man named Colonel Tom Parker was watching. He wasn't really a colonel, but he was a salesman like no other. By mid-1955, he was calling the shots. Parker would take half of Elvis's earnings, even make money off the hate, selling both "I Love Elvis" and "I Hate Elvis" pins. In a single year, his merchandise raked in over $22 million. That same year, RCA came knocking. Phillips asked for an unheard-of $35,000 to buy out Elvis's contract. RCA agreed, plus $5,000 in unpaid royalties. The deal was sealed in November 1955. Elvis was just 20. 2 months later, he recorded Heartbreak Hotel. The echo-heavy ballad climbed the charts and sat at number 1 for 7 weeks. It became the year's best-selling single. That's what Elvis always believed in, even when the spotlight shifted and the scripts got worse. And through all the rhinestones and rehearsals, that belief never wavered. He held on to gospel music like it was the only part of showbiz that still felt sacred. His first Grammy didn't come from rock and roll, it came from gospel. How Great Thou Art won in 1967, and he wept when he heard the news. The moment reminded him of his roots, of Sunday mornings in Tupelo, of his mother's humming voice. And when his voice soared in gospel, it wasn't just performance, it was prayer. In a world that kept cashing in on his fame, that one corner of his life still felt pure. But behind the curtain, things were shifting. The comeback brought energy, but also more pressure, more shows, more demands, and fewer moments to breathe. His health was starting to slip, but the audience didn't notice. Not yet. He smiled, kicked, sang his soul out. but backstage, the pace was grinding him down. Still, Elvis gave every ounce of himself. In Vegas, he didn't just show up, he dominated. No one else could hold a crowd like he could. He wasn't just performing, he was reclaiming his crown. Yet even kings need rest, and Elvis rarely got any. By the early 70s, the sparkle began to dim. He tried to stay sharp, tried to keep the fire alive. But as the years pressed on, the cracks widened. He gained weight, missed rehearsals, canceled shows. He still sang like no one else, but something was slipping. Friends said his laughter came less often. He seemed tired, distracted. And yet, fans kept pouring in, selling out shows, screaming his name, as if their devotion could hold him together. But no one knew what he was truly battling behind those closed hotel doors. Then came 1973. Aloha from Hawaii. It was a worldwide broadcast, the first live satellite concert in history. Over 1 billion people tuned in. Think about that. 1 in 4 humans on Earth watched Elvis sing that night. Draped in white, his jumpsuit gleaming, he poured out ballads and anthems with the same magic that made him a star in '56. The world watched in awe. And yet, back home, the cracks were turning into fault lines. The glitter couldn't cover up the wear. But for that one night under the hot lights, Elvis was unstoppable. It was lightning in a bottle. After that, something shifted again. He started retreating more. Graceland became his fortress, his sanctuary. He'd spend hours on the piano at night, playing gospel tunes to no one in particular. Just his voice, echoing through those long, quiet halls. He was back in that little boy mindset, dreaming under southern stars. But the world outside Graceland didn't slow down. Tours, contracts, press. He tried to keep up, but his circle was shrinking, his world growing quieter, smaller, heavier. In those final years, Elvis became almost mythic. Fans still waited outside gates for a glimpse of the king. He still traveled, still sang. But the energy was no longer boundless. He started mumbling lyrics, forgetting lines. The man who once set stages ablaze now struggled to stay upright. And still, people cheered. That's the tragic loyalty of fame. Audiences clapped even when they should have been concerned. And right there, in the stillness of Graceland, another story was unfolding. Lisa Marie. She was growing up in the middle of all of it. The chaos, the legacy, the quiet heartbreak. Elvis adored her. When she was around, the lights in his eyes flickered back on. They'd ride golf carts around the estate, watch TV for hours, eat peanut butter and banana sandwiches like it was a royal feast. But even she could sense the sadness in him, that aching, invisible thing he carried. The world only found out what that sadness truly cost him on August 16, 1977. News broke, and fans all over the world froze. Radios went silent, then exploded with tributes. Streets around Graceland flooded with candles, tears, and heartbreak. The king was gone, and yet it felt like part of him remained. In every record, every lyric, every echo of his unmistakable voice. He wasn't just a man anymore, he was legend. But the story didn't end there. Lisa Marie, just 9 years old, inherited more than a fortune. She inherited the weight of a myth. And it was heavy. She grew up in the glare of his shadow, trying to find her own way through the noise. Through marriages, music, public stumbles. The world watched her too closely, too harshly, as if Elvis's crown had passed to her, and everyone expected her to wear it. And then there's Priscilla, widely misunderstood. She became the steward of his legacy, a woman painted by tabloids but hardened by experience. She didn't just protect Graceland, she expanded it. From a crumbling estate to a thriving empire. Tours, exhibits, a legacy museum. She kept the myth alive, yes, but she also protected the man beneath it. The complicated, loving, broken human being she once knew. Years later, in interviews, you can still hear the warmth in her voice, the way she says his name, the memories she guards carefully, like fragile heirlooms. She knows better than anyone that fame doesn't make you invincible, that legends still bleed, that behind every bright light is a shadow. And somehow, that makes Elvis's story even more human. And just when you think the story's over, Hollywood pulls you back in. Baz Luhrmann's 2022 film Elvis reignited global interest, introducing the king to a new generation. Austin Butler's performance haunted audiences. Critics called it electric, raw, heartbreaking. And that final scene, Elvis singing Unchained Melody, with trembling hands, sweat pouring down, voice breaking, was more than just a performance. It was a goodbye. That single moment brought tears to the eyes of millions who weren't even alive when Elvis walked this earth. Because in that voice, we hear everything he carried. The joy, the pressure, the exhaustion, the dream. Elvis's story isn't just about fame or money or chart-topping records. It's about the cost of being adored, the price of being larger than life. He gave so much of himself piece by piece until there was nothing left. And yet, he still lives in every echo of his music, in every scarf worn in tribute, in every fan who lights a candle outside Graceland every August. What happened behind the closed gates of Graceland has haunted Hollywood for decades, but now the secrets are unfolding faster than ever. As new revelations surface and past narratives are questioned, fans and critics alike are left wondering who really knew Elvis and who is still cashing in on his legacy. The echoes of heartbreak and control still ring through Ginger Alden's haunting stories. She wasn't just his fiancée. She became the reluctant witness to a man unraveling. When Elvis pulled that trigger above her head for not bringing him yogurt, it wasn't just a tantrum. It was a symbol of the chaos gripping his final days. Imagine waking up not to love, but to fear, with diamond-studded gifts masking deeper scars. Her silence all those years wasn't golden. It was survival. And Elvis's spiral wasn't hidden. It was written in every shattered toilet, every bruised argument, every chilling whisper behind Graceland's velvet curtains. He masked the weight gain, the sluggish movements, with rhinestone-studded jumpsuits and theatrical capes, each one a costume designed to distract from his decline. His iconic Aloha from Hawaii concert may have beamed him into over 1 billion homes, but few knew the truth. He was already burning out behind the spotlight. And when he ended that night with God bless, adios, it wasn't just showmanship. It felt like a goodbye. That moment, once seen as Elvis at his peak, is now viewed through a new, heartbreaking lens. What adds even more complexity is David's portrayal of Elvis's relationships. He alleged troubling patterns involving very young girls, a subject few dared to touch for decades. When he pointed to Priscilla, met at 14, molded under Elvis's control, he wasn't rewriting history. He was highlighting what had always been there, but ignored. And Priscilla's own words supported that control. He told her how to dress, how to wear her hair, how to think. That's not just stardom, it's dominance. And if it happened today, the headlines would read very differently. Public opinion is shifting, fast. And yet, David's own credibility remains tangled. He's written multiple books, each retelling Elvis's life with a slightly different slant. In one version, Elvis is a fallen god. In another, he's a reckless addict. Then suddenly, he's a misunderstood genius. Which one is the truth? Or are they all just stories written in the pursuit of profit? That's the question fans are now grappling with. His 2024 release, My Brother Elvis, The Final Years, promised untold truths. But readers quickly noticed something unsettling. Many stories were recycled from older interviews and books. The raw emotion seemed real, but the repetition raised red flags. The contradictions didn't stop there. In 2023, David apologized publicly for his controversial remarks. But then, he posted on Facebook, claiming he never made them. That back and forth only fueled the fire. Was he sincerely regretful, or just trying to protect a brand? For many, this was the tipping point. They began to see David not as a truth-teller, but as someone who had learned how to monetize memory. Still, one thing is undeniable. Elvis lived large. Behind the pain, there was opulence. His fleet of Cadillacs, Rolls-Royces, and Stutz Blackhawks weren't just vehicles, they were statements. He famously owned the iconic 1955 pink Cadillac Fleetwood, which became a symbol of his generosity and flair. His taste in timepieces was just as bold. Diamond-encrusted Omega constellations and custom-made Hamilton watches adorned his wrist. When it came to real estate, Graceland was only the beginning. Elvis owned multiple properties across California and Tennessee, including a Beverly Hills mansion with panoramic views. His private jet, the Lisa Marie, cost over $250,000 to refurbish and was decked out with gold-plated seatbelts and suede chairs. Financially, Elvis was a powerhouse and a paradox. He earned millions but spent like there was no tomorrow. His business dealings were largely controlled by Colonel Tom Parker, whose controversial deals cost Elvis lucrative opportunities. Despite all that, Elvis ventured into licensing and merchandising early on, helping lay the groundwork for the modern celebrity brand. His insurance policies were reportedly vast, covering not just life and health, but show cancellations and even voice protection. The lesson here? Fame can bring fortune, but without trusted advisors and control, it slips through like sand. As we look back on Elvis's journey, from Tupelo's dusty roads to Las Vegas's neon glare, the contrasts are striking. Once the fresh-faced boy in a checkered jacket, singing his heart out on the Ed Sullivan Show, he ended up bloated, medicated, and isolated. But his voice, even in his darkest hours, never truly lost its power. There's footage of him, heavy and gasping, still able to stir souls with a single note. That's the mystery of Elvis. A man adored by the world, but perhaps never truly known by anyone. And maybe that's the real legacy. The duality? The king who redefined music, and the man who couldn't outrun his demons. As the spotlight fades and the myth is peeled back, what remains is a story of brilliance and brokenness. A reminder that even legends live in the shadows they cast. And as fans continue to celebrate his highs, they're now reckoning with the depths too. Because sometimes, the most unforgettable stories are the ones we never wanted to believe.